All right, let's get back to the other big story of the day. President Trump holding his first official cabinet meeting today. Just over a month after taking office, all agency heads in attendance, including Elon Musk, who is not an official cabinet member. The president mentioning how impressed he has been with the department so far. He also opened the floor to Elon Musk as the first speaker of the meeting, who emphasized the importance of making all of these federal government cuts.
If we don't do this, America will go bankrupt. That's why it has to be done. Can actually find $1 trillion in savings. That would be roughly 15% of the $7 trillion budget. And obviously that can only be done with the support of everyone in this room. And I'd like to thank everyone for your support. Thank you very much. This can only be done with your support. DOGE is a support function for the president and for the agencies and departments to help achieve those savings.
All right, let's get on to NewsNation's Robert Sherman, live for us there outside of the White House. Robert, we certainly heard a lot, also talked about the negotiations with Ukraine, talked about DOGE, a lot covered in that nearly hour-long back and forth with reporters.
Yeah, no two ways about it, Nichole. I mean, that lasted for about an hour or so, and a lot of major topics were covered in all of this. There was certainly going to be a lot of eyeballs coming into today with this being the president's first cabinet meeting. That fact alone certainly garnering attention. Then there was the moment in which the White House publicly announced that Elon Musk was going to be in attendance at this cabinet meeting. And the White House has been very particular in their wording, emphasizing that he is a White House employee, not the administrator of DOGE, but he serves at the behest of the president in this aspect here. And as you pointed out, Nichole, the president very quick to give the floor to Elon Musk at this cabinet meeting to talk about the work that DOGE has been doing. Something that has certainly been dominating conversation in recent days here in Washington has been those emails that have gone out asking federal employees to talk about their 5 accomplishments within the last week. This is what the president had to say about that. Take a listen.
I'd like to add that those million people that haven't responded, though, Elon, they are on the bubble. You know, I wouldn't say that we're thrilled about it. You know, they haven't responded. Now, maybe they don't exist. Maybe we're paying people that don't exist. Don't forget, we just got here. This group just got here. But those people are on the bubble, as they say. You know, maybe they're going to be gone. Maybe they're not around. Maybe they have other jobs. Maybe they moved and they're not where they're supposed to be.
The White House's perspective on all this in regards to Elon Musk's attendance at this meeting is that DOGE has been working in tandem with many of these different government agencies, looking for places in order to find more efficiency in the way that dollars are earmarked to certain programs as well. And then you even had the president coming to bat for Elon Musk in that meeting as well, saying that he's been standing by the work that he's been doing with all of these different agencies here as well. So certainly a lot of attention on this first cabinet meeting here today, and all that attention without question stoked by a lot of the things that we heard and saw there just a short while ago. Nichole.
Absolutely. Robert, another topic, the president asked extensively about the war in Ukraine, about negotiations around that. What can we expect in the coming days?
Yeah, I mean, foreign policy, definitely a dominating topic with this as well. Questions about Taiwan, questions about the situation in Israel, but as you pointed out, mainly about the situation in Ukraine, confirming that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is supposed to be here this week, and they anticipate that this minerals deal is going to be signed. A few notes on that from the president in his comments there is that he talked about peacekeeping in Ukraine, leaving the door open for European allies, and saying that it's largely their responsibility, that's his position, for any peacekeeping boots on the ground in order to be utilized by European partners. Also talked about the minerals deal and what he described as automatic security agreements that would come into effect with that, not necessarily strictly outlined security agreements within this deal itself, saying that because the United States is investing in Ukraine, they wouldn't simply leave the door open for any foreign activity in order to come onto Ukrainian soil. And then talking about the fact that his #1 priority is getting a deal between the Russians and the Ukrainians, remaining confident that one can be brokered between both of those sides, but not giving a lot of specifics, keeping the cards close to the vest on exactly what concessions back and forth each side would have to make. Nichole.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.